Imagine a world where humanity never truly begins, where every story ever told, every monument ever built, every dream ever dreamed, simply never happens. Not because of some futuristic war, not because of an alien invasion, but because of a single natural event, hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before civilization, agriculture, or even language as we know it. This is the story of the day humans almost went extinct. A moment when our ancestors, fragile, scattered, and barely surviving, were pushed so close to oblivion that the entire future of our species balanced on the edge of a knife. A moment so catastrophic that, according to some scientific estimates, as few as 1,000 breeding humans may have been left on Earth. One bad season, one unlucky drought, or one shift in climate, and that would have been it, the end of us. But instead, something happened. Something that allowed our ancestors not just to survive, but to rise, to spread across continents, to conquer environments colder, hotter, and more dangerous than anything our species had ever faced, and ultimately, to change the destiny of planet Earth forever. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most dramatic chapters of human evolution. The near-extinction bottleneck. What caused it? How our ancestors survived it? And why that survival shaped everything about the humans alive today. But to understand this event, we need to go back, far back, to a time when the world looked nothing like the one we know. The world of 70,000 years ago. Picture Africa roughly 70,000 years before the present. Humans existed, yes, but only in small, scattered bands of hunter-gatherers. There were no cities, no kings, no agriculture, no metal. Just families and tribes moving through forests, rivers and grasslands, struggling daily to find food, water, and safety. And they were not alone. Other human species walked the earth. Telophils, robust and powerful, dominating the cold lands of Europe. Mysterious cousins known from only a few scraps of bone and tooth. Homo erectus, once widespread, now dwindling. Homo floresiensis, the hobbits of Indonesia. It was a crowded world, and Homo sapiens was not yet special. In fact, if you looked at our species then, you would probably not predict greatness. We were vulnerable, poorly adapted to many regions, few in number, and constantly struggling for survival. But then, something changed, something big, something violent, something that nearly killed us before our story could even begin. The cataclysm, the Toba eruption. Around 74,000 years ago, on the island now known as Sumatra, the earth tore open. A supervolcano, Mount Toba, erupted in one of the most powerful explosions in the last several million years. Ash shot 50 kilometers into the sky. The blast was thousands of times stronger than the eruption that destroyed Pompeii, and the world felt the shock. Volcanic ash clouds spread across the planet, blotting out the sun. Temperatures plummeted. Rain patterns collapsed. Plants died. Animals died. Entire ecosystems fell apart. According to the Toba catastrophe theory, this eruption caused a global volcanic winter lasting years, maybe even decades. And humans? Humans were pushed to the brink. Food sources collapsed. Hunting became nearly impossible. Fresh water became scarce. Shelter became essential and harder to find. Small bands of humans, already fragile, were wiped out. By the time the climate stabilized, Homo sapiens may have been reduced to a tiny number. A number so small, modern humans today carry the genetic signature of that bottleneck. Some scientists believe we were within a breath of extinction. And yet, we didn't die. Somehow, against all odds, humans survived. But how? That's where the story gets truly fascinating. How did any humans survive? Surviving a global catastrophe of this scale wasn't just luck. It required something special, something that set Homo sapiens apart long before we began building civilizations. Even in the harshest conditions of the Toba aftermath, scattered groups of humans found ways to hold on. But how? What did they do differently from every other species struggling on the planet? The answer lies in three key strengths, instincts that became the foundation of who we are today. 1. Unmatched ability. 2. Identification. 3. Cooperation. These three traits didn't just save us. They created the blueprint for humanity's future. Let's break them down. 1. Adaptability, our secret weapon. Long before climate change or natural disasters became topics of global discussion, ancient humans were forced to adapt to them constantly. During the volcanic winter, temperatures plunged, rainfall changed, plants died off in many regions. But while other species were tied to one environment, early humans were not. We could move. We could travel long distances. We could explore new regions. We could experiment with unfamiliar foods, new shelters, and different landscapes. Even small changes mattered. Emating new roots and wild tubers when fruits disappeared. Hunting small animals when large prey became scarce. Using caves and rock shelters for warmth. Tracking small but stable microclimates where life still held on. Little by little, our ancestors learned how to live in a world that was suddenly colder, darker, and more unpredictable. In many ways, adaptability is why we are still here at all. 2. Innovation, the rise of human creativity. In the face of scarcity, humans didn't just adapt, they invented. This period, according to archaeological evidence, marks the birth of several key technologies. Blister-advanced stone tools, sharper, more specialized, more efficient. Combating hunting strategies, coordinated group hunts, trapping methods, and more tactical planning. Miraculous symbolic thinking. Ingurly symbolic thinking. Engravings, pigments, and jewelry begin to appear in Africa soon after the bottleneck. Signs of a growing human mind. Control of fire. Fire wasn't new, but the use of fire became more sophisticated for warmth, cooking, protection, and even reshaping landscapes. These innovations weren't luxuries, they were survival tools. And every improvement, every creative leap, boosted our species' chances of surviving the catastrophe. 3. Cooperation, the true superpower. In a collapsing world, humans discovered something no other species could replicate. We survived together. During the bottleneck, cooperation became essential. Food sharing, shelter sharing, raising children collectively, and organizing group strategies for survival. These behaviors weren't optional. They were the difference between life and death. Imagine small groups of humans, huddled around fires, sharing every scrap of food they could find, teaching each other what roots were edible, how to track animals in a dying world, how to keep the group alive. These weren't just families, they were early societies. And out of these desperate moments came something extraordinary. Our species-wide ability to communicate, to empathize, and to work together for a shared goal. This is what truly set Homo sapiens apart from Neanderthals and other human species. We weren't the strongest, we weren't the fastest, we weren't the largest, but we were the best at being human. And that meant we were the best at surviving together. The genetic evidence, proof of our narrow escape. Modern DNA tells a surprising story. Scientists have discovered that the genetic diversity of all humans alive today is shockingly small compared to many other animals. For example, some primates have more genetic variation in a single troop than the entire human population on Earth today. Cheetahs and seals show similar patterns, species that also pass through severe population bottlenecks. This lack of variation strongly suggests one thing. All humans alive today descended from a very small number of individuals who survived the catastrophe. Some estimates say minimized young 10,000 humans total, but perhaps as few as 1,000 breeding adults. Think about that. Every human being, every culture, every language, every face on Earth may trace back to a tiny group of survivors struggling through the aftermath of Toba. We are the children of resilience, the descendants of people who refused to die, even when the world around them seemed to be collapsing. But the story doesn't end with survival, because what came after the bottleneck would transform our species forever. Something awakened in those survivors, a spark of intelligence, creativity, and ambition that would send humanity on a trajectory unlike anything the world had ever seen. The aftermath, a quiet rebirth of humanity. As the volcanic winters slowly loosened its grip on the planet, the world that emerged was not the same one our ancestors once knew. Forests had shifted. Animal populations had collapsed in many regions. Rivers ran differently. The climate, still unstable, presented new challenges year after year. But for the humans who survived, this strange, changed world brought something else: opportunity. With competition reduced, old predators gone or weakened, and unoccupied territory stretching across continents, humanity stood at the starting line of an evolutionary transformation. Small groups wandered slowly across Africa and beyond, exploring, learning, adapting. And little by little, something incredible began to happen. Humans became smarter, not because intelligence suddenly appeared, but because those who survived the catastrophe were the most adaptable, the most collaborative, and the most innovative. Their traits became the foundation of every generation that followed. From this bottleneck, humanity didn't just recover, we evolved. The explosion of human culture. Archaeologists noticed something extraordinary in the layers of Earth dating to the time after the bottleneck. Suddenly, human behavior becomes far more complex and creative. We begin to see transitional made of shells and bones, nigmaments used for body painting and symbolism, sophisticated stone blades and composite tools, carved objects representing animals or abstract symbols, possible early musical instruments. This period, often called the Great Leap Forward, marks a turning point in human culture. For tens of thousands of years, human technology changed very slowly. But after this crisis, invention accelerates. Why? Because catastrophe forced us to innovate. The humans who survived passed on not just genes, but ways of thinking. Creative thinking, abstract reasoning, problem-solving under pressure. Traits that would become the pillars of every society on Earth. It's as if the near extinction didn't destroy us, it forged us. The Great Migrations begin. With new skills, rising populations, and a changing climate, humans began leaving Africa in greater numbers. This was not a single journey, but a long, wave-like movement lasting thousands of years. Our ancestors spread across the Arabian Peninsula, into the Middle East, through India and Southeast Asia, into Europe, and eventually across Ice Age land bridges into the Americas. Every new environment presented a challenge, and every challenge demanded new innovation. Cold climates required clothing, fire, shelters, and eventually tailored tools. Dense forests required new hunting strategies. Dry deserts demanded better water knowledge. Wherever humanity went, adaptation followed. This global expansion, triggered in part by the survivors of the bottleneck, is what ultimately allowed Homo sapiens to become the dominant human species. The other human species begin to disappear. But we were not alone on this journey. As we spread across the world, we encountered our distant cousins. Neanderthals in Europe and West Asia, Denisovans in Central and East Asia, Homo floresiensis in Indonesia, Ome Luzonensis in the Philippines. What followed was not a single story of conflict, but a complex mixture of competition, interbreeding, and displacement. For thousands of years, humans shared the planet with other human species. But slowly, one by one, they vanished. Why? The reasons are still debated, but the aftermath of the bottleneck may be part of the answer. The survivors, our ancestors, had stronger adaptability, social structures, and innovative capacity. These advantages spread with every migration. Neanderthals were strong, skilled hunters, yet they lived in smaller, more isolated groups. Denisovans were mysterious and powerful, but their populations were scattered. Homo erectus had endured for millions of years, but time had narrowed their resilience. When Homo sapiens arrived with our flexible thinking, complex language, and cooperative networks, the game changed. The world was shifting, and we were the best at shifting with it. The bottleneck didn't just nearly end humanity. It reshaped what humanity was. The rise of language, art, and storytelling. As human groups spread and grew, communication became more sophisticated. Language, once limited to basic sounds and gestures, expanded into complex systems of meaning. This allowed larger groups to coordinate, knowledge to be shared between generations, stories to pass on wisdom, warn of danger and inspire identity, fireplace, traditions, rituals, and culture to form. And with language came art. Cave paintings, carvings, rhythmic music, shared mythologies. These were not hobbies. They were tools for unity, survival, and memory. Humans became storytellers, and those stories were the glue that held societies together. The first myths might have been about the sky, the animals, or the spirits of ancestors, but perhaps, somewhere deep in our ancient memory, humans carried stories of the catastrophe that shaped us, stories of fire in the sky, of darkness lasting years, of struggling through a world transformed. Perhaps these ancient memories evolved into the flood myths, destruction legends, and rebirth stories that appear in cultures around the world. Because humanity, at its core, is a species shaped by survival, and by the memory of near extinction. The human comeback, from near death to dominance. From a fragile population struggling in the shadows of a volcanic winter, humans began to rise. Slowly at first, then with momentum that would reshape the entire planet. As the descendants of the survivors spread across continents, they brought with them the traits that had saved them: adaptability, innovation, stabilization, operation, a mind wired for creativity. These weren't just evolutionary advantages. They were the seeds of everything humanity would eventually build. And over tens of thousands of years, these seeds started to grow. Hunters became planners. Foragers became inventors. Small groups became tribes. Tribes became nations. And the descendants of a once nearly extinct species became the most influential force Earth has ever seen. But to understand just how extraordinary this comeback was, we need to reflect on what it means. Because humans didn't just survive a catastrophe, we transformed because of it. The lessons our ancestors left us. When scientists look at the human bottleneck today, they don't see a tragedy. They see a turning point. A moment when our species was tested. A moment when pressure forged new strengths. A moment when humans discovered what it truly means to be human. 3 lessons stand out. Lesson 1. Crisis creates innovation. Under immense pressure, creativity becomes essential. Our ancestors invented, experimented, and adapted in ways no other species could match. This is the same spark that fuels modern science, technology, art, and engineering. In every era, From the Stone Age to the Space Age, humans innovate when survival demands it. Lesson 2. Cooperation is our greatest power. No single human could have survived the aftermath of Toba. Only groups could. That instinct to share food, coordinate hunts, teach skills, and protect one another became the foundation of tribes, villages, cultures, and civilizations. It's why humans build cities. It's why we create laws, form communities, and tell stories. Cooperation isn't optional. It's the reason we exist. Lesson 3. The fragility of our existence makes us stronger. Knowing we almost vanished adds weight to our achievements. Every scientific discovery, every monument, every language, every culture, every child being born today exists because a small band of humans refused to give up. We are the descendants of resilience. We carry the legacy of survival in our very DNA. The world we built from almost nothing. Now, imagine for a moment that the Toba eruption had been just slightly worse. Imagine humanity slipping below the point of recovery. Imagine our species ending before it even truly began. There would be no pyramids, no Rome, no China, no India, no Maya, no music, no art, no languages, no science, medicine, or technology, no internet, no stories, no us. Every human life, past, present, and future, hung on the survival of a tiny group of people living in the harshest times imaginable. And because they held on, everything we know exists. The echo of the bottleneck in modern humanity. Even today, traces of this ancient catastrophe are still with us. Geneticists can see the bottleneck in our DNA, the evidence that humanity came frighteningly close to disappearing. Anthropologists can see the explosion of cultural complexity that followed, and psychologists can see the legacy of cooperation, storytelling, and group survival woven into human behavior. Our species remembers, even if we don't consciously know it. Every time humans face global challenges, climate, disease, disaster, that ancient resilience rises again, because we are the children of catastrophe. And more importantly, we are the children of survival. The most unlikely species. Humanity was never guaranteed. We were never destined for greatness. We were fragile, vulnerable, and very nearly erased from history. But we survived, we adapted, we transformed, and from a near extinction, we became the species that would one day reach the stars, decode the universe, and dream of futures our ancestors could never imagine. So, the next time you look at the world around you, the cities, the technology, the art, the billions of people, remember this: all of it exists because once, long ago, a small band of humans refused to die. This is the story of how our species nearly ended, and how that ending became our beginning.